So, the question on everybody's mind is, do you still use Gmail?
Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, Facebook uses Exchange, so it was actually a really uphill battle. It was one of the major issues in the acquisition, whether I could actually still remember how to use Outlook. But I still use Gmail exclusively for my personal email.
So the last time I saw you was at F8. Zuck had just basically talked about the new platform, and then he brought you out to share the details. Can you talk about how social plugins have been expanding and spreading?
Yeah, sure. So around the time of April of last year, the Facebook platform had over 1 million developers, and it was, by almost all measurements, really successful. But one of the major pieces of feedback we got from developers outside of the sphere of social app developers in Silicon Valley was that it was very difficult to use. And in particular, sites like media sites, newspaper sites, their technology is a content management system. So turning a content management system into a social product is a really significant engineering effort, and a lot of those companies don't even have the engineering resources to do it. So we introduced social plugins, which are essentially cut and paste social functionality. Technically speaking, it's just an iframe that you paste on your page, and it presents personalized information to the viewer of your site, like the most liked articles on a newspaper site, or the most liked videos on a video site. And when we launched, as of a couple of months ago, we had about 350,000 sites with social plugins on them, and now we actually have about 2 million as of today.
Wow.
So it's been just skyrocketing in terms of adoption. And we've learned a lot from it. It turns out ease of use when it comes to developer tools is as important or more important than features. And I think it's something that we always knew in theory, but this really explosion in usage has really taught us a lot.
And so how many like buttons are served today?
I don't know off the top of my head, but way over 3 billion. I mean, I don't know the exact number.
So, Facebook, by launching social plugins, has really, they've gone from just being a place for applications, an internal kind of application site, to becoming more of a distributed application network. How do you guys balance your needs with that?
So it's something we've talked a lot about at Facebook because, when we started, Facebook platform was really about apps inside of Facebook.com, essentially extensions to the Facebook experience. And many of the original apps were actually extensions of Facebook metaphors, like poke made super poke, and then obviously things expanded beyond that. Social games are a big part of the Facebook experience. But the vision for the platform has always been not so much how do you extend Facebook, but how do you bring your social graph and your social network with you wherever you go, whether that's you participating on an external website or your phone or a television set or any other device that you use. So we like to think of our platform as horizontal. That calling it horizontal is really contrasting it to sort of the vertically integrated platforms that most developers think of as platforms. Whether it's the iPhone and you're developing sort of every layer of the stack is sort of Apple technology, or the web browser with the LAMP stack, or Android phones or Windows application development. Unlike those platforms, Facebook is sort of a component you can plug into your application no matter wherever it lives. Probably the best example that I use all the time is Yelp. I use Facebook on Yelp.com, and I use Facebook on the Yelp iPhone application, and I use the Yelp Facebook application that runs within Facebook.com. So it's pretty cool because for us, we're trying to target all developers, whether they're mobile developers or web developers or both. And I think it's kind of a distinguishing characteristic of our platform.
So how are developers driving the Facebook platform? Like Google was basically forced into launching the Google Maps API.
I recall it very well, yeah.
What have developers forced Facebook to do anything?
Yes, I think, when I wasn't at Facebook when the platform launched, but I can tell you that I don't think that people anticipated the explosion in social games. By far the biggest companies that have built deeply on the Facebook platform are social game companies. Playfish and Playdom both sold their companies to EA and Disney respectively for hundreds of millions of dollars. Zynga is, by most accounts, worth well over $1 billion and employs more people than Facebook actually at this point. And this is an entire industry. And I don't think if you had asked Mark at the time that they were launching the platform that this would have happened. So certainly the platform has evolved well beyond what we thought it would be. And really the question we're trying to answer is, what is unique about games? And how can we enable startup developers in particular in other industries and other verticals to produce startups that are as disruptive as those companies were to games and other verticals. So that's been the focus for the past few months, is trying to work really closely with startups to try to enable that for other verticals. I have my own personal theories, but I think entrepreneurs working in this area probably have a better intuition than I do.
So with all those like buttons out there and social plugins out there, what data are you gathering about other people's sites? And what are you going to end up doing with that?
So the short answer is we're just aggregating likes. That's explicit sharing that happens on those sites. It's worth noting that we actually explicitly delete all of the logs from social plugins so that we explicitly aren't collecting any passive information from those third-party sites.
Are you keeping the aggregate information?
Maybe to track usage over time, but that's explicitly not a goal of the program.
And is that an immediate or 90 days?
Yeah, within 90 days. It actually happens sooner. We, formally, promise within 90 days, but it happens sooner than that. One of the insights we've had with, creating social products is that social products are valuable, when everything is very clear about when you're sharing and with whom you're sharing. And so the nice thing about the like button is it's a very clear social action. When you're clicking it, the purpose of clicking it is to share it with your friends. And so we've tried to build our platform around sort of explicit control at all times. And it's something that I think has made the product more valuable because people know exactly what to expect when they click these buttons. What's cool about the likes themselves, though, is there's a lot of data portability. So one of the coolest Facebook platform implementations is Pandora. If you've never used it, now with Facebook, when you go to Pandora, rather than having to construct a radio station by hand by listing the bands that you like, if you have bands listed in your Facebook profile that you already like, it will create a radio station immediately based on your musical preferences. And so you don't need to type anything. All of a sudden, you're listening to a personalized, customized radio station. It's pretty awesome. And what's cool about that is those likes didn't have to come from Pandora. It could have been a band you typed in your profile, or if Green Day has a fan page on Facebook and you clicked like on that, or even another music site. If you liked a band on there, that information using what we call the Open Graph Protocol is represented in a uniform way, and it's in the right category of music, and Pandora can use it to create the radio station.
So you guys are going to kind of become an intermediary lookup site for the web. You'll be able to put IMDb together with Rotten Tomatoes.
And the goal isn't explicitly mashups, but really data portability. I mean, I think over time, because Facebook profiles are so important to people's identities online, they're going to put a lot of time into constructing that profile and constructing their preferences and tastes. And we really feel like it's our obligation to enable people to bring that to the other sites and the other devices that they use. So, you spent so much time listening to all the music that you liked, or you went to IMDb and liked a bunch of movies. The next movie site you're visit, if you want to bring that with you to that site, you should be able to do that. And so we're really focused on that. And I think our platform is probably the largest version of sort of large-scale data portability that exists today.
How soon until we get the Facebook fire hose?
That's a good question. We've been working a lot on this problem. The fire hose itself is too big for any one site to consume. So we tried to do it using webhooks, which is sort of the basis of PubSub-Hubbub, though we're not using the PubSub-Hubbub protocol formally, which we launched at F8. So there's a set of real-time APIs where you can get real-time streaming updates from all of the users who have installed your application. And so large partners like Zynga are using this to update their local caches of data without having to constantly ping Facebook servers. I think the consensus of that product is it's not exactly V1.0 yet.
Okay.
There's a lot of quirks with it, and we have a whole team working on sort of revising that product to make it more useful. But I think it needs another couple iterations before it's something that we're probably going to promote really widely to a lot of developers.
So you're constantly changing the API. How can developers keep up with basically the rate of change?
Yeah, so this is something we've talked a lot about. We launched a new API at F8 called the Graph API, and the main purpose of launching it was to launch a framework for doing a modern RESTful API that was extensible enough that we wouldn't need to change our APIs to introduce new features. So it's sort of a simple mapping of the social graph into a URL structure that's very clear for most developers to understand. And so as we've launched new features like Facebook Places, for example, and we launched an API for Places, it fit into the Graph API without any changes to any of the existing features. And so that's sort of like the short answer is we've tried to like revise our strategy for doing APIs so that it's structurally more stable than it was before, but I think we have a long way to go on it. I think the biggest complaint that I hear when I'm at conferences like these, if I'm ever talking to an engineer who's actually using our APIs day to day, there's about a laundry list of 10 things that annoy the heck out of them about our APIs, and that's probably the primary focus of our platform team right now, which is stability, performance, and reliability. And we've made progress on those goals, but I don't think we're nearly where we want to be on it at all.
So when you're thinking about a new feature, how do you determine whether or not you're going to build it yourself, like, say, payments or Places, or you're going to partner, like, with Skype?
I think that's a fundamental question that platform companies have to deal with. I always think of the example of Microsoft. They're developing Office on one hand, but AutoCAD is developed by a third-party company, and where is that line drawn? I don't think there's
I think it's drawn by money.
Yeah, that's probably true. I think the short answer of which applications we choose to work on are the ones we feel like are very core to the Facebook experience. So in the case of Places, the act of like checking in was something that was already happening naturally through status messages on Facebook. So we felt it was important to sort of like match that innate need with a product because so many users were implicitly or explicitly asking for it. Our approach with working with partners is just to be transparent. So with the Places example, Foursquare and Gowalla and the other big, location-based services knew about the product well before we announced it. And in fact, we launched with those companies so that they were tightly integrated with the product. And so, I understand the competitive complexities inherent in that launch, but at the very least, we want to give our partners transparency so they can adjust their product strategy accordingly. So even if things are complex, we'll just acknowledge that and give as much visibility as possible so people can make the right decisions for their business.
So when you start thinking about the Facebook product and the platform and the API, do you think web first, like Facebook.com, seen in a Mac browser, or do you think mobile first? How do you view the product? How does Facebook think that?
That's something that's quickly evolving. Actually, one of the major technology decisions we're grappling with is mobile platform, like the current state of mobile platforms. We're kind of in a state that reminds me of the mid-90s in terms of application development. There's so many platforms in the mobile ecosystem that are significant, from iPhone and Android and Symbian. And
yeah, it's just a resource hog.
It's a resource hog. And so every time we introduce a feature, we have to update about 12 versions of Facebook: mobile web, Android, iPhone, Symbian, BlackBerry, Windows Mobile. And it's become a very significant engineering issue for us. And then because we're a platform company too, that same technical issue is impacting all of our platform partners as well. So we've spent a lot of time talking about where we think the world is going and where we're going to devote resources. I don't think we have a silver bullet answer, but the short version of it is that we're really doubling down on HTML5. We think that just like the mid-90s, the web browser won because it's the friendliest application development environment. And we think that HTML5 has really started to become a really cohesive product, so sort of a suite of features that's really powerful. And over the long term, we expect to really focus not only our own company's efforts on HTML5, but also our platform.
What's the biggest barrier to HTML5, basically, on the phone rising above apps?
I think, practically speaking, feeling native. iPhone has really solid UI conventions that native apps all use. And does a web app feel, nice? That's a very qualitative thing that translates to a handful of very real technical issues, whether it's fancy 3D transitions or the way buttons look, things like that. I think those things will work themselves out over time. I consider them tactical and not strategic. But overall, I think the WebKit has really evolved to become a really really awesome mobile browser, and so we're really excited about it.
Okay, so we're over time, but I've got 3 quick Twitter questions, so you just need to pound out. Facebook phone, when does it come out? Next Christmas?
I think, honestly, a lot of these, like, we end up talking to a lot of mobile developers and mobile phone makers because most of them integrate Facebook in some way into the phone, and most of them we don't actually build anything. They just use our platform just like any other developer does. And I think some of those conversations can get misconstrued into things that they're not. It's a sort of short cop-out answer.
Okay. Twitter user One Awesome Mama wants to know, Mr. Taylor, when will I be able to upload videos to Facebook from my iPhone?
I was trying to find an answer to this before this, but I actually don't know. We should definitely enable that, and it's a shame that it doesn't exist already.
Okay, and one final question from Twitter user Jason Preston. How ugly is Mark's code?
So most of Mark's original code, I think, has been, replaced as the engineering team has gone. But I can
kind of slowly and quietly without talking about it.
But I don't think it was ugly. I think Mark's a pretty good hacker, all in all. I think actually he just checked in code recently based on, a bet from one of the other folks at Facebook that it had been too long since he had done that. And if you've ever met Mark, whenever he sees a challenge, he takes it. So anyway, yeah, he writes pretty good code.
All right. Yeah. And Bret will be out tomorrow morning with Anil Dash and Ryan Sarver, the director of platform for Twitter. So there'll be more opportunities for questions then. Thanks a lot, Bret.
Thank you.